I'm going to speak for only 10 minutes on the policy actions that flow out of the due diligence in the Sierra Nevada Gold Country report that we've just released and the new tools that we developed. And of course, we've shown this slide every time because we think it's important that people understand that the log jam of how come we can't get anybody paying attention to abandoned mines is we've realized that you have to do a few things differently. You have to do a real assessment to see what's on the land with clear eyes. And that's what we call improved due diligence. When people have confidence that all of the things have been found, well, then the market might have some reason to invest, whether that's a public agency, a private agency. When people begin to trust the process, we can start flowing money towards increasing the pace and scale of abandoned mine land acquisition. That's the theory we've been promoting. And because of this, you can identify appropriate end uses. Remediation actions will actually be pursued. Forests and meadows with abandoned mines can be repaired. Liability can be clarified. Tribal organizations can secure and restore important cultural resources as part of this process. One of our very first workshop was on how to improve tribal engagement. And we can conserve really important conservation landscapes. Today, we're looking at how this informs permitting. You've heard Carrie talk about the permitting around CEQA. You heard Director Whittlesey talk about how this impacts Yuba Water Agency. I'm going to just spend a minute referring to a case study that really helped us understand these issues. We were working on a project, a multi-purpose wetlands restoration and trail project that was going to improve connectivity between the creek and the meadow. And they were proposing to move large amounts of waste rock, which was actually mine debris from upstream legacy gold mines that had been mobilized in a flood in a decade before. And the National Environmental Policy review of this project found no issues of concern. So people began moving forward with this restoration of the wetlands project. The USGS, and it was on BLM lands, the USGS saw the potential for a problem there, came out and did a really good informed assessment, putting up fun equipment, and they did find heavy metals that were discharging from this site. And one of their results was a rate of about 168 cubic meters per year during the study period from 2010 to 2013. We're standing on these mine tailings and looking at this restoration project in this slide. So as a result, the Bureau of Land Management, who owned the property there, had to do an environmental review and put the materials at the library. The Sierra Fund helped them hold local meetings on the topic, and the project was redesigned. And the project funds that were saved were used elsewhere in the project. And that's the point we're trying to make, is that when you do a good assessment, you can avoid new problems, you can solve real problems, you can redirect resources in a new way. So today, I'm going to talk quite briefly about our policies to increase pace and scale of mine remediation with prioritizing the protection of public and landscape health when developing abandoned mine lands for conservation and recreational activities, and bringing new resources to the table. And it's not just money. We need more than just money. We need new tools. So one of our recommendations is that we think the Department of Conservation makes sense to me to be the leader of this. Their director will be speaking to us soon. It's a large department with the Abandoned Mine Lands Unit inside of it, along with the Division of Mine Reclamation, the Gas, Energy, and Minerals Division, and a variety of other big landscape programs. I believe they are in the best position to be the coordinator of a new collaborative team of experts that brings people from the regulatory agencies like Department of Toxic Substances Control, State Water Resources Control Board, Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, not really regulatory, but experts on this subject. The natural resources departments which own the public lands we're talking about, the Native American Heritage Commission, who can bring in this expertise from tribes, and our two state universities, UC and Cal State. to help identify and clarify best management practices and best available technologies that are available for mine remediation so that people can stop trying to guess or panic about how to do this. And also, of course, to best available assessment practices. We would like, when they figure out these BMPs and BATs, be able to use those as part of permitting. And to do any of these things, if you're trying to work on abandoned mines, we need to have a much better publicly accessible California state database of mine impacted areas on public lands and likely private lands. We need to get our arms around this by understanding it. There's going to need to be legislation required. This slide says that we should try to get all projects on mine impacted lands that are subject to CEQA become part of a permitting process and support this goal. They have to include an informed assessment, and they have to bring a new game to this. They have to strengthen requirements for environmental review. I'm talking about state agencies doing acquisitions or funding acquisitions need to have a better assessment prior to acquisition money. Permitting agencies need to have a better understanding of that assessment so they can approve the environmental permitting needed for and the project design to mitigate whatever might be on that landscape. We have to have government permits really identify, assess, as part of their work, remediate AMLs as needed and use these processes that we need to develop. And the main point here is we can do this while we're doing other stuff on the land, multi-benefit projects out on public lands. We've talked today quite a bit about permitting forest health projects. As we've mentioned, and we know, the state of California is not going to require CEQA for emergency forest health treatments. Emergency forest health treatments don't require CEQA, so we are definitely not targeting them, but we are saying plans for treatment and for forest health on AML should prioritize hydraulic mine sites because they are sites with high erosion potential. They are sites of contaminated sediment discharge. They take up valuable water storage space in downstream reservoirs. It's a perfect place where you're in the forest with heavy equipment to reroute streams, to clarify where the mine tailing piles are. We think the Department of Conservation's Abandoned Mine Land Unit should create publicly available LiDAR data sets for all abandoned mine landscapes. This can take a lot of money. That's why we're going to need legislative action and budget activity. Prioritizing forest land that are expected to be treated. And also, wouldn't it be great if emergency wildfire fighting crews had a really good understanding of the landscape that they're fighting the fire on using LiDAR? There might be eroding cliffs. There might be unexpected, scary stuff out there that they're not familiar with when they're coming out on the landscape. We again think, I'm sure Director Shabazian's watching this and just really excited about all the things I'm putting on his plate, but we think they need to provide that clearinghouse about how to combine mine remediation with forest health treatments with this, and actually with all kinds of remediation. We're talking to the State Mining and Geology Board about how do you clean up abandoned mines as part of habitat restoration. There's a lot of places where forest health treatment, other kinds of treatment on the land are being funded, and how do we have them see the abandoned mine features on the property when these projects are going forward? So here's another example that we think legislation might be required for. I think SMARA needs to be, that's the Surface Mining and Reclamation Act, really needs to be amended to require that when a mine is coming on and doing a mine activity on an old historic mine, that first of all, that the environmental review for that has to see the old mines. They have to figure out what the required mitigation for those old mine lands will be as part of their reclamation plan and their financial assurance mechanisms. So we're saying we think we have to really work. This isn't to be done overnight. We need to sit down with the appropriate people, the mining engineers, the environmental habitat experts, et cetera, and figure out how we can combine new mines that actually clean up the old mines upon which they're operating. The picture at the bottom of this is from a tour I took a couple of years ago of the proposed new mine on top of the old Idaho, Maryland mine. That's on the bottom slide, part of the slide. There's also an unusual sequencing that we've clarified in the report in a couple of different places about how when a normal project comes before the Planning Commission, it includes all kinds of information about potential road impacts, habitat impacts, etc. But mining is permitted separately by the regional water board. So the county with land use authority will permit a project like they recently did with the Blue Lead mine here up in Nevada County. They'll permit a project, finalize its environmental document, finalize its reclamation plan, put up a financial mechanism thing, and then they send it off to the water board and see if the water board will permit it. And that's an unusual sequencing. One might want to call it a loophole if one was looking for a simpler word. I think it's this approval of all the secret documents ahead of the water quality documents. I've literally seen mine permits where this is empty in the secret review, no information about the water quality permitting. So that's a strange little hole. Finally, this is a completely different direction for the recommendations, but we wanted to make sure we touched on these key pieces at this last one of our workshops on this topic. The State Water Resources Control Board has been concerned about mercury. They've been trying to figure out a way to stop mercury discharge into the Delta, into the San Francisco Bay. It's become very clear that the majority of that mercury comes from local sources and where we live, and we're asking the State Water Resources Control Board to take into consideration best available practices and remediation activities when they take on this mercury maximum daily load challenge that they're trying to face. We want them to require adoption of best management practice and best available technologies at identified sources of sediment and mercury above their reservoir, above the state's reservoirs.